Rain slipped quietly down the glass outside the cafe window as Ethan Monroe sat alone, nursing a cold cup of black coffee. He looked like a man who had not slept in days, because he had not. Acting auditions had dried up. Rent was 2 weeks overdue. The last text from his mother was a gentle reminder that she could not help him anymore. Ethan had once believed he would make it big in the city. At 31, he now performed in cheap commercials and occasionally pretended to be groomsmen in paid wedding photos. His face was forgettable. His voice was average. But his ability to disappear into another person's life, that was something else. As he sat staring into the cup, wondering if it was time to return home in shame, a tall man in a gray trench coat entered the cafe. He scanned the room and walked straight toward Ethan. "You are Ethan Monroe," man said without asking. Ethan blinked, confused, and nodded slowly. "Yes. Do I know you?" The man smiled, not warmly. "Not yet, but I know what you need, and I know what you can do." The stranger sat across from him without waiting for an invitation. He placed a black folder on the table, thick, sealed, with a red string. His fingers rested on top of it. "My name is Dalton Crane. I represent a private client who has a special situation." Ethan leaned back slightly, suddenly alert. "Is this some kind of scam?" Dalton smiled again. "No, this is a job. 1 week. You act like someone else. You live in his house, wear his clothes, follow a script. You do not ask questions. You get paid $10,000 up front, and another 10 after the job is done." Ethan laughed nervously. "This is insane." Dalton tapped the folder. "Open it." With shaky fingers, Ethan pulled the red string loose and opened the folder. Inside were photographs, all of one man, mid-30s, clean-shaven, same height, same build, same face. Ethan froze. The man in the pictures looked exactly like him, almost, not twins, but close enough to make a stranger believe. Dalton spoke, quiet but firm. "This man's name is Matthew Hale. You will become him for 7 days. No improvisation. Everything is in the file. His voice, his schedule, his mannerisms. You follow it like a script." Ethan looked up, startled. "Where is he?" Dalton did not blink. "That is not your concern." There was a pause. A long, heavy silence. Then Dalton slid a plain envelope across the table. Inside, stacked neatly, were $100 bills. Ethan looked down at the money, then back at the folder, then out the window, where the rain had stopped, but the city still looked cold. He did not know what frightened him more, the strange offer, or the fact that part of him wanted to say yes, and a voice inside whispered that his life might never be the same again. 3 days later, Ethan stepped out of a private car and onto a long stone driveway. The house in front of him was quiet and elegant, 2 stories tall, glass windows glowing faintly in the fading light. A security gate that closed behind him with a mechanical hum. Everything smelled expensive. Freshly cut grass, polished wood. Something floral he could not name. He carried nothing but the folder and a duffel bag. Everything else, he had been told, was waiting for him inside. As he reached the front door, it opened before he could knock. A woman in a dark uniform stepped aside. "Welcome home, Mr. Hale," she said smoothly, bowing her head. For a split second, Ethan hesitated. Then he nodded once, just like the videos had shown him. "Thank you, Dana." She stepped back without showing any surprise. The real Matthew Hale must not have been one for warm greetings. Inside, the house was silent. Clean, modern, glass and marble. Not a single photo on the walls. No clutter, no warmth. A large envelope sat on the hallway table, labeled in red ink. Day 1, $7 p.m. Inside was a handwritten list. Speak to Dana only when necessary. Use the study after 8 p.m. Dinner will be served at 7:30. Do not answer personal calls. Do not open the second-floor guest room. At the bottom was a small note in Dalton's handwriting. No questions, no mistakes. Ethan folded the note and slipped it into his pocket. He walked into the study as instructed. The room was cold and overly neat. Books lined the walls, most of them unread. A decanter of scotch waited untouched beside crystal glasses. He sat at the desk and opened the laptop that had been left unlocked. Emails flooded the screen, hundreds. Business messages, all addressed to Matthew. But there was one flagged in red from an unknown sender. He clicked it. Subject: Who are you? No message, no name, no attachments. His pulse quickened. He deleted it quickly and leaned back, hands shaking slightly. Dinner was quiet. Dana served salmon and left without speaking. Ethan ate in silence, trying to chew like Matthew had in the surveillance videos. He practiced folding his napkin the exact same way. He rehearsed Matthew's voice under his breath, mimicking every phrase, but one thing gnawed at his mind: the guest room. He passed by it twice on the way to bed. The door was plain, no lock, no handle scratches. It looked untouched, but something about it felt wrong. Like the air near it was heavier. Still, he stood in front of it longer than he meant to. Then, footsteps behind him. Dana. She stood silently, at the end of the hallway, her face unreadable. "Is there anything else you require tonight, Mr. Hale?" she asked politely. Ethan turned quickly, forcing a faint smile. "No, thank you." She nodded and walked away. But as he entered the master bedroom, something flickered in the back of his mind, a shadow in the hallway mirror. When he turned, the hallway was empty, but the reflection showed a figure still standing at the guest room door, and it was not Dana. Ethan stood still, staring at the hallway mirror long after the figure disappeared. His heart pounded like a warning drum, yet the corridor behind him was completely empty. He stepped closer to the mirror, examining its frame, its edges. It was just glass, nothing unusual. But he knew what he saw: a silhouette, a person. Not Dana. Someone else had been standing at the door. He slept poorly that night, the luxury bed offering no comfort. Every creak of the wooden floor beneath him, every soft click of the house settling, kept his nerves raw. Somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered that he was being watched. Not by cameras, not by security, by something else. The next morning, he followed the schedule in the folder. Gym for 45 minutes. Breakfast, plain oatmeal with blueberries. He answered 6 business emails, attended a short video call, with his camera off of course, and took a scripted phone call from Rachel, Matthew's financial advisor. His responses had been rehearsed, his tone polished. Nobody suspected a thing. By noon, Ethan had started to feel confident. Maybe this would work. Maybe this strange, eerie week would pass, and he would walk away with $20,000. Until the doorbell rang. Dana did not answer it. Ethan opened the front door himself. A woman stood outside, maybe early 30s, hair pulled back, her coat still dusted with rain. Her eyes locked onto his. "Matthew," she said with breathless relief. "You are here. I tried calling. I tried everything. They said you were overseas." Ethan's stomach turned. He had not been briefed about anyone expected at the house. He hesitated, blinking as calmly as possible. "Was handling something private. I had to disconnect for a while." She nodded slowly, her voice shaking. "I understand. I need to talk to you. It is about the guest room." The words chilled him. "Maybe this is not the best time," Ethan replied, keeping his expression distant. "Can we talk later?" But she stepped forward, desperate now. "Matthew, please. You promised we would tell the truth after the accident. We cannot keep pretending she never existed." Ethan froze. She lowered her voice. "I know it was not Your fault. I told the police that. He swallowed hard. What is your name? A pause. Her expression changed, just slightly. It is me. Mara. Ethan nodded, pretending to remember, but his thoughts raced. Who was Mara? What accident? Who was she? And why was there a need to pretend? Before he could respond, Dana appeared, behind him like a shadow. Mr. Hale has a conference call in 5 minutes, she said calmly. Perhaps you could return later. Mara looked disappointed, even wounded. Of course. I just thought, after everything, she turned and walked slowly back to her car. Ethan shut the door and leaned against it, breath shallow. He turned to Dana. Who is she? Dana stared at him a moment too long. You know who she is, sir. No, Ethan said firmly. I want you to tell me. Dana paused. Then with a strange calmness she replied, she was the last person to see your sister alive. And then she walked away, leaving Ethan alone, shaking, with a new truth he had never been prepared for. Ethan stood frozen in the quiet foyer long after Dana disappeared into the hallway. The word sister echoed in his ears, louder than the tick of the grandfather clock nearby. There had been no mention of a sister in the file, no family history, no photographs, no funeral, nothing. He walked back to the study and locked the door behind him. He reopened the folder. He scanned the pages again. Name, age, education, eating habits, speaking style. But still, not a single mention of siblings. Either Dalton had deliberately left it out, or someone was lying. A soft ping interrupted his thoughts. Another email. Subject: Stop pretending. No sender. No reply option. Ethan stared at it. His hands trembled slightly as he clicked it open. A single sentence appeared. You are not him, and the house knows it. He slammed the laptop shut. The floor creaked above him. Slowly he looked up toward the guest room that must never be opened. Paced the study, whispering to himself, trying to hold on to logic. Maybe this was a setup. Maybe someone was watching him, trying to rattle him. Maybe this was part of the job, a test of how well he could stay in character. He opened the small safe under the desk. Inside were 2 phones, one labeled Hale Work, the other, Hale Personal. The personal phone had 10 missed calls, all from Mara. He played one of the voicemails. Matthew, I need to know where you put her things. The closet, the photos, the letters. It is like she never existed. You said we would not hide anymore. Please, please call me. Ethan put the phone down. He needed answers. He walked slowly up the stairs. The house was silent, except for the creaking floor beneath him. He stood in front of the guest room door again. He reached for the knob, then stopped. Instead, he knocked. Once, twice. No sound came back. He turned the handle. Locked. Of course it was. He reached into his pocket and removed the old utility key Dana had given him for emergency access to the wine cellar. He knelt down, inserted the key into the lower hinge lock, and heard a soft click. The door creaked open 2 inches. A cold breeze met his face. The air smelled like dust and something faintly floral. He pushed the door wider. Inside, the room was dim and quiet. A pale blue wall, a twin bed with a white sheet, a dressing table, one window slightly cracked open. Everything looked untouched. But the bed had an indent in the middle, as if someone had been sitting there recently. He stepped inside. On the table was a hairbrush, a perfume bottle, and a silver locket. He picked up the locket. Inside was a tiny photo of 2 children, a boy and a girl. Same eyes, same crooked smile, same resemblance. Ethan's hands went cold. It was him and her. But he had never taken this photo. He had never met this girl. He put the locket down and turned toward the door. Dana was standing there, expressionless, silent. "You should not be in here," she said calmly. "I needed to know," Ethan replied. "You were not supposed to see this," she whispered. Then she stepped aside, allowing him to leave. But before he passed her, she added softly, "You are not the first." Ethan barely slept that night. He kept turning the words over in his mind. "You are not the first." The house creaked with old secrets, and the air inside felt heavier than it had when he first arrived. It no longer felt like a job or an act. It felt like a trap. The next morning, Ethan sat in the garden behind the house, pretending to read the newspaper while watching Dana through the glass kitchen doors. She moved gracefully, precisely. Not a maid, not a servant. She was something else. A gatekeeper, maybe, or a warden. He needed to know what she meant. At breakfast, he spoke carefully. "Dana, when you said I am not the first, what did you mean?" She looked up from pouring his tea, her face as unreadable as ever. "You should eat, Mr. Hale. You have meetings soon." "Dana," he pressed gently. "Was there someone before me pretending to be Matthew Hale?" She paused. Then, without meeting his eyes, she said, "More than one." Ethan stared at her. Were they actors too? Her silence was answer enough. His pulse quickened. "Where are they now?" Dana placed the teapot down slowly. "Gone. Some left. Some forgot who they were." "What do you mean, forgot?" "They lived the role too long. They started believing they were him." Ethan leaned back. "Is Matthew Hale even alive?" Dana looked directly at him for the first time that morning. "Are you?" The question hit him like a slap. Before he could reply, the front doorbell rang. He stood up immediately. "I will get it." At the door stood Mara. Again. But this time, she looked different. Her eyes were red. She was holding a small brown envelope in her hands. "I need to show you something," she said softly. He let her inside, against Dana's quiet protest. They sat in the study, the door closed behind them. Mara placed the envelope on the table and opened it. Inside were 3 photographs. One showed Matthew as a child, sitting beside a young girl, the same girl from the locket. The second showed Matthew as a teenager, standing beside an unfamiliar man with his arm around him. The third photo made Ethan's blood run cold. It was a blurry image of himself, taken a few days ago, standing in the upstairs hallway, staring at the guest room door. "I did not take that," he whispered. "I found it outside," Mara said. "Folded on the windshield of my car, no note, just that photo." Ethan looked up. "Who gave you this?" She shook her head. "I do not know, but someone is watching you, and they want me to know that you are not Matthew." Ethan stared at the photo, his hands trembling. "What happened to his sister, Mara?" he asked finally. "Why is no one talking about her?" Mara lowered her gaze. "She disappeared 3 years ago. Some say she drowned. Some say she ran away. But there are rumors that she found out something about Matthew, something terrible. And then she vanished, and Matthew shut down. He removed every trace of her. Photos, letters, her clothes, everything." She paused, eyes shining. "But the house remembers." Ethan looked around the study. Every wall suddenly felt like it had ears. "I think I know where she is," he whispered. The storm outside had rolled in fast, washing the sky in sheets of gray. Rain tapped against the tall windows of the Hale estate as Ethan stood before the guest room one final time. Mara stood beside him, clutching the locket tightly in her palm, her breathing shallow but steady. "There is something behind the wardrobe," she whispered. "She used to hide there as a child, remember? You used to find her there. It was your game." Ethan's voice cracked. I told you. I am not him. She gave him a sad smile. I know. But maybe you are the only one willing to care. They pushed the heavy wardrobe aside together. Behind it, the wall seemed untouched, but something about it felt subtly wrong. Ethan pressed his fingers along the edges until they caught on a small hidden latch. With a soft click, the wall opened. A narrow crawl space stretched ahead, dimly lit from a sliver of light seeping through the far end. The air was still and dry. Ethan crawled forward. At the end was a concealed chamber, no larger than a closet. Inside, boxes lined the floor. On the wall hung a child's drawing. 2 stick figures, labeled Me and Matt. A teddy bear sat beside a folded pink blanket, its fur matted with age. Mara entered behind him, kneeling as she reached for one of the boxes. Inside were journals, handwritten, dated, filled with entries by Matthew Hale's sister, Claire. Ethan flipped through one. He is different now. Cold. Always watching me. I know something is wrong. I found letters from someone named Dalton. I think he is controlling Matt. I cannot trust them anymore. Ethan handed her another. I tried to leave. I packed a bag, but the door was locked. Dana said it was for my own safety. She is lying. I saw Matthew whispering to someone. They think I am in the way. If I vanish, please someone find this. Mara's eyes welled with tears. She never ran away, she whispered. They silenced her. Suddenly, a voice echoed behind them. You should not have found that. Dalton Crane stood at the entrance to the crawl space. His face, calm and unreadable, was cast in shadow. You knew the truth, Ethan said firmly. You helped cover it up. Dalton did not deny it. Claire was going to expose Matthew's laundering operations. She found records hidden in the estate, files he had buried years ago. He panicked. He locked her away, and Dana kept her hidden. But she did not die. She escaped. Mara's eyes widened. What? Dalton nodded. 3 months after she disappeared, a fire broke out at a boarding house 3 towns away. A young woman with no ID was treated for burns, no memory, no past. She vanished from the hospital the next day. Where is she now? Ethan asked, breathless. Dalton hesitated. We never found her. Because you did not want to, Ethan replied. Dalton stepped forward. Matthew Hale disappeared a year ago. Maybe guilt, maybe madness, maybe something else. But the estate could not collapse. His name still matters. His assets, his companies. We needed someone to be Matthew. We could not afford scandal. That is why we brought in replacements. People like you. But you are not like the others. You care. That is dangerous. Ethan stood tall. That is why you failed. He took one of the journals, stuffed it into his coat, and led Mara out of the crawl space. 2 weeks later, the Hale estate sat dark, cold, and abandoned. Following a court order, federal investigators had seized control of the property. Secret documents were leaked to the media. Embezzlement, identity fraud, the mysterious disappearance of Claire Hale. Dana was arrested. Dalton Crane was nowhere to be found. The biggest twist came when a woman checked herself into a small clinic in a coastal town. No ID, no memory. But when shown a drawing of a teddy bear, she broke into tears. DNA confirmed what the world had forgotten. Claire Hale was alive. Ethan Monroe, once a struggling actor, now lived in a small apartment 2 cities away. No headlines, no attention, just peace. He opened a worn envelope on his kitchen table. Inside was a photo of Claire, smiling in the hospital garden, holding the same teddy bear from the hidden room. A note was clipped beneath it. Thank you for remembering me when everyone else forgot. Claire. Ethan smiled faintly. He looked in the mirror. He no longer saw Matthew Hale, just himself, whole, grounded, and finally free. Some roles change your life. Others help you find it again. Ethan stepped into a stranger's life and uncovered a buried truth that gave someone else their future back. If this story gave you chills, share it with someone who believes that identity is more than a name. And remember, sometimes becoming someone else is the only way to become who you were meant to be. Stay with us, because some stories are not just told, they are remembered. Comment your thoughts. Subscribe.